So sheer endless potential, or are there significant risks that definitely must not be overlooked? It's my pleasure to be able to talk now with essentially what is the EU's chief designer using these scissors, trying to apply them safely. Irene Sacristán Sánchez is the head of unit for biotechnology at the European Commission's Directorate-General for Health and Food Safety. Now, we just heard a couple of expert voices on genome editing. When we hear that the EU has recognized its potential, what are the EU's plans with this grand tool?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation and for allowing me to join you today. So, in a nutshell, as you probably know, at the end of April, we published a study on new genomic techniques. It was a study that was requested by the Council of the European Union. We tried to look at, to take a very broad view of what we call new genomic techniques, which are techniques that have developed in the last 20 years, and of which gene editing is a part. And we looked at how they are today regulated in the EU, what are potential benefits, concerns, and so forth. And on the basis of the conclusions of the study, what we have announced is to initiate a policy action to try to devise a specific regulatory framework for a part of these techniques, for their use in plants, and for two specific types of modification, targeted mutagenesis and cisgenesis, which are modifications actually that can be brought about by gene editing. Primarily, what we want is to maintain a framework that ensures a high level of safety. As you've just said, this is one of the issues in the debate. At the same time, we want a framework that is proportionate to what is known about these techniques and to the risk profiles. And in addition, we want to be able to address the potential benefits that these technologies can bring. As the previous speakers have said, there is a potential to contribute to sustainable agriculture, to climate change goals. And we need mechanisms in our regulatory system to be able to take account of those benefits, which we don't have today.
So when you want to talk to a wider European public about this, this is a very controversial issue in the EU. In fact, it's one of the sticking points, the major sticking points between the US and the EU when it comes to trade barriers, the whole issue of genetically modified foods. What is the next big thing there? What are you specifically going after? Is it less fertilizer? Is it resilience towards drought, those climate factors? What are the key leverages there?
Yes, so we are focusing, as I said, at this stage on plants and their food and feed products. So when we look at the possible benefits and at the possible results that these products could bring in this area, they mostly relate to goals of sustainable agriculture, preserving biodiversity, and combating climate change. So basically, just to give you a few examples, gene editing in the area of plants, in the agri-food area, can be used to develop products that are more resistant to pests and diseases, and that therefore might need less pesticides. Products or plants that are more resistant to extreme weather conditions, heat, rain, and so forth. Plants with an improved nutrient content that could contribute to healthier diets. Plants and their products with less toxicity. Improved yields for farmers, improved storage conditions. These are the kind of improvements that all breeding techniques, of course, try to achieve. But with the use of new genomic techniques and gene editing, there is a possibility to speed up the development of such varieties, because these techniques tend to be quite efficient. And also they are precise, as a couple of the speakers previously have said. So we want to try to design a regulatory framework specifically for this brand derived from these two techniques. That would be a fit-for-purpose framework to enable these products when they are shown to be safe to reach our market and contribute to our sustainability goals, which are, of course, very much at the center, not just of societal challenges, but also of the current priorities of the European Union and the Commission in the context of the Green Deal or the Farm to Fork.
One of the big concerns, we just previously spoke about food security and smallhold farmers, particularly in Africa, are those high losses post-harvest, particularly in developing countries. Where does this technology offer assistance, and is there a policy of technology transfer towards poorer countries?
So in terms of what the technology offers, it's basically what I have been saying before. And there are in the research that we've done in the context of our study about the possible uses and the applications that are in development, there are many different traits that are in development, and I've mentioned a few. And of course, these are technologies that can be very useful in all parts of the world, and including in the developing country. The initiative that I'm responsible for would be for a regulatory framework in the European Union, so for the approval and use of these products in the European Union. But of course, a favorable regulatory framework means also that we would allow more innovation and more research in Europe that then could be beneficial throughout.
Commission President Ursula von der Leyen recently said in a different context, this was on privacy and data usage, that the EU could become an exporter of regulation when it comes to such sensitive issues. So can you put this into a broader context? Do you see the EU developing itself as the toughest place under the tightest regulation and the highest safety standards in the world? Or how much room are you creating for science here in the EU for own developments?
I mean, I wouldn't present these objectives as contradictory. I think that that's one of the difficulties in this debate, and we don't think they should be contradictory. We have today a legal framework for genetically modified organisms, which applies to new techniques, including gene editing, which is certainly one of the most stringent in the world. And this is linked to our values when it comes to food and to consumers. And it's not something that we are thinking of putting aside. The safety of our consumers and the safety of the environment will remain top priorities when we try to design a new regulatory framework for new techniques for gene editing. At the same time, such a framework needs to be proportionate. New techniques of biotechnology and gene editing are a very, very diverse group of techniques, and they can be used in very different ways. You can do very limited modifications of the genome or very extensive ones. So it is not possible to draw general conclusions on their safety. What we think we need is a regulatory framework and environment that has a degree of proportionality and that adapts requirements to the information we have about these techniques, to the traits introduced, to the complexity of the modification. Some of these techniques allow you to achieve alterations that can also be achieved through conventional breeding, and the resulting products are similar. Others lead to very extensive modifications, including inserting foreign genetic material, so closer to the transgenic products that we are used to. We just think we need a framework that differentiates while ensuring safety, and at the same time enabling that we reap the benefits from these innovations.
Now, one of the critics just now in that video called for traceability as consumers. Will consumers be able to trace whether something was genome edited, and how much? You just said yourself there might be just a slight nip and tuck, or there might be completely new designs of plants. How transparent will that be for consumers?
This is indeed a crucial issue. Information to consumers is a central issue in the discussion since many years on genetic modified organisms, and now in the context of new techniques and so forth. I cannot tell you what the actual mechanisms in the legislation will be, because we are at a very early process. What I can tell you is that this will be one of the central elements that we will be considering, and we need to look at, when it comes to these techniques, at what is the information that the consumer needs, and what is the information that needs to be given on the technique, also on the traits, on the potential benefits. So I think we need to look at the issue of consumer information in this more global way, but certainly this is going to be a key issue in the debate, because it's important for European consumers.
Now, land usage is also a huge concern when it comes to food security, as the global population is increasing. Are you also doing calculations in terms of how much more efficiency these kinds of adapted plants can bring once you take them to the field? How much less land might be used for food production in the future?
So after the summer, we will start the process that we call impact assessment, which we do every time we develop a new policy regulatory initiative. And we will indeed be looking at the different impacts of the policy options that we consider. So we will not only sort of think of a regulatory framework in the abstract, but we will spend a few months trying to analyze what that would mean in practice. Of course, what we analyze is the impact of our regulatory provisions. We do not look globally at all impacts of these technologies, but there is increasing information and studies that are being done in this regard. There are many professional organizations that are generating very interesting data and looking at all different aspects. So I think the level of knowledge will increase in the next months and years.
What are the core crops that you are focusing on?
Sorry?
The core crops. The main plants. What are the plants that most of the focus is on here?
We ourselves do not focus on specific plants. We will try to do a regulatory framework for all plants. However, in the study that we published, a part of the study has been looking at the research that is ongoing and at products that are at research stage or at pre-market stage. And what we are seeing there is that new genomic techniques and gene editing are being researched in a quite diverse array of plants. So it's a little bit wider than what we are normally used to with GMOs, where it's a couple of crops and it tends to be the same ones. Here there's more variety in cereals, fruits, legumes, and so forth. But our policy initiative will not differentiate between different types of plants.
I'm just getting a question of someone who's tuned in today. David Spencer's asking, shouldn't we regulate the end products of plant breeding, well, or here genetic modification, rather than the process behind their creation?
This is indeed part of the debate. Are we regulating the technology, or are we considering the final product? Again, I cannot anticipate the policy options that we will look at, and I can certainly not anticipate the final solution that we will choose. But as I was saying before, we do need a framework which is proportionate. And for that, we think indeed that we need probably to look not just at the technology, but also at aspects relating to the final product. So that is something that we will be thinking about, and which certainly is very much part of the debate amongst stakeholders.
And I also have a question about the timeline here. Michael Koch is asking, you mentioned a policy action to revise the current policy framework. How fast do you expect that this revision can be conducted?
We don't have actually a decided timeline. We presented the study at the end of April and are using this time until the summer primarily to do a wide communication effort and to engage stakeholders and member states and European Parliament, and to get also a little bit the response. And on that basis, after the summer, we will present a roadmap document that outlines the initiative, where we will be able to be more precise about the exact timing. But what I can tell you is that in any case, towards the end of this year, we will be starting an impact assessment process. And this is a quite thorough analysis of the economic, social, environmental impact of options. So it will take a few months before we put a legal proposal on the table, if the final decision after the impact assessment is that what we need is to propose new legislation.
Okay, so still very, very early stages there, regulation in the making. Thank you very much, Irene Sánchez, the head of the Unit for Biotechnology at the European Commission's Directorate-General for Health and Food Safety. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.